with that story, the worst natural disaster in a century. That's what the World Health Organization has called the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. The combined death toll between the two countries has now risen above 37,000 and continues to climb. Over 8,000 people have been rescued from the rubble as humanitarian aid organizations from around the world help with the search and rescue operations. rkiye senior reporter Desan Thathia on the ground in Turkey. Let's get the very latest from him now. Desan, talk to me about what is actually happening, because 9 days after these devastating earthquakes, there must be very little hope of finding people alive.
Well, Sal, we saw, I guess, one of the final glimmers of that hope that you are talking about a short while ago. If the lights change, that's because the electricity seems to have cut off where we are at the stadium. We're back at the base camp. But Sal, just a little while earlier, we were at a site where there was some work being done by the search and rescue teams. That was a building collapse, a 7-story building that was being searched at the time, and there was an indication with a life locator. That's what the teams from the Gift of the Givers were using there, and there was an indication that there could have possibly been a survivor. But unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be, because I've just gotten an update now from Ahmed Baum of the Gift of the Givers, and he says that it turns out that it was in fact a body, so someone that was there but has since passed away. And prior to that, just before that, in the process of trying to get to that person, they had brought in a digger to clear the path. So there was a lot of activity there, and a lot of, I guess, everyone standing around had some kind of hope. There were even ambulances that were parked outside waiting if there was potentially someone that was going to come out. And in that process, they first took out another body that was in the path of where they were trying to get in to get to this potential survivor. But now, just a short while ago, we were told that it doesn't appear that there were any survivors in that building, and there's possibly more bodies that would have to be recovered. And that's what the team there will be busy with now after the South African team returned to base. Remember, they had been out the whole day, in fact, since last week, doing this kind of work. But it's at this point that that mission starts to draw to a close.
Yeah. We know that over 37,000 people have died. Do we know how many unaccounted people there are?
We don't know yet, Sal, but I can tell you just from being on the ground here in Antakya that that number is probably going to be well into the thousands, because if I had to look at each of the buildings, and we've shown you and our viewers these pictures over the past few weeks, if you look at an apartment block, you're talking about 9 floors, 10 floors, 12 floors, you're talking about hundreds of people in each of those buildings. But the numbers of bodies that are being recovered, or the numbers of survivors, don't even give an indication or come anywhere close to the number of people that could potentially be in there. And although this is not a scientific explanation that I'm giving you, I'm talking to you about what we've been seeing, because we have been out every single day until late at night. One apartment block had one of the people that was there said that they believe that there were more than 500 people that were living in that block. And at the time that we were there, I think they had only retrieved about 4 or 5 bodies. So I may not have answered your question directly, Sal, but I hope that gives you and the viewers some indication of the extent of this and how many people are unaccounted for, and what those numbers could potentially look like.
Yeah, it certainly gives us a sort of terrifying scale of just how many people may have died, even though the death toll is already astronomically high. Talk to me about these teams. We know that many of them are from across the world. How long are they going to stay in the area? There were reports, I think, earlier today that some of them are now being pulled back. Will many of the teams stay on even after all hope of any lives being found has gone? Will they help with retrieval of bodies so that people can at least give family members a decent burial?
This is never an easy conversation to have, Sal, because this is the period, and I think we're now at the end of that period where you find that hope really starts to diminish. It's at the beginning when teams respond from other parts of the world. For example, here there were about 10,000, I believe, different teams that had come in and tried to lend a hand to bolster the support or bolster the teams that were already at work here in Turkey. But it's at this point now, I think we had about 9 days or 10 days since that those earthquakes hit. It's now that these teams are starting to withdraw. In fact, Ahmed Bam of the Gift of the Givers was telling me earlier that they were told that the international search and rescue teams could end their work here now, because it's possible that the next step from this point onwards, even as soon as this week or tomorrow, is to start demolishing these buildings, and they will start excavating and removing all of that rubble that sadly has to happen at some point as the hope of finding survivors starts to diminish. And we are at that period now where we are also seeing at this campsite that we're at now, there were teams from across the world here, from Singapore, from China, from Oman, from Serbia, everywhere. And now they are slowly starting to wrap up and starting to head back. Gift of the Givers will do the same. They've made their difference here, but ultimately they can't stay here forever. And the teams that are on the ground, the local authorities, will pick up and I guess fill the blanks, so to speak.
We know that the earthquake impacted a number of cities and many thousands of people. Do you have a scale of how many people are homeless? And what is the plan for them? Because surely it's going to be months, if not years, before they're able to piece their lives back together.
And that is something that I think about every single day when we are out. And there are moments where, especially when we're at these sites, and we have to just be quiet because they are listening to see if there are any survivors. And generally I have those thoughts that you're talking about. Initially, the numbers that were being bandied around were about 15 million people. 15 million people that were affected in 10 provinces in this region. And I can't stress this enough, that the visuals that we've been showing you is from only just one of those provinces. And you find similar damage everywhere else. Today I spoke to some journalists that were on the Syrian side, and they said, although it's not as bad, there is this kind of impact in that country as well, except they don't have the resources that Turkey has. So the problem is really more, it's bigger than we think, and I think it's going to take years. I can't even begin to imagine where the country would start to try to fix this problem. They would really need to demolish almost all of those buildings, even those that have not collapsed fully, because one has to now question the structural integrity of those blocks. There were one or two that we've seen that are still standing, but by and large, they need to bring them down. And the people that have been displaced can't live in tents forever. But the other problem is that they can't be put back into any other structure here, because there's still the risk of tremors. Ourselves here, we're sleeping outside in tents at this camp because since we've gotten here, there have been several tremors. We felt one the other night when we were sitting outside here. So it seems like the safer place to be is in these tents, and that's where the displaced are also living. So it certainly will be a lot of work, but beyond that, I believe that the implications for this nation are going to be felt for many years to come. Sal, I think we'll leave it there. I have lost my connection to you, but I'm sure we'll catch up again on this topic soon.
All right, thank you so much, Desin. Coming to us from Antakya in Turkey, we do still have your picture. I know you can't hear us, but I know that a little earlier you spoke to a resident of Antakya, as we've been discussing. What happens when the rescue teams leave, and how do the people feel? Just take a listen to this clip.
After Syrian war and COVID-19, and after this situation, there is no future here for people, for social and economical. And also under Turkey, there are a lot of immigration, Syrian, Afghanistan people, but Turkey is not rich country. That's why I think, as you say.
So where would you like to go?
I actually want to go to Europe. I want to live there for help people, not just for Germany, also from all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, what is left? Desan just telling us before we lost the connection, 15 million people in Turkey seem to have been displaced, have lost their homes in some way. Many of them, of course, will want to leave and start afresh somewhere else. And if you think of the refugee situation, the many refugees that have come from Afghanistan in the last 2 years, also from Ukraine, this is a massive issue. These people have lost everything. How do you start again? Syria